My name is Korneeva, and today I'm going to talk about error handling in Angular with a focus on HTTP errors. I'm going to explain a bit in a moment why. But first, let me briefly introduce myself. I was born in Uzbekistan, and then my parents moved to Russia, where I grew up. Though I have a lot of Ukrainian relatives, and I think like 5/8 of me should be Ukrainian. So if you have some questions in Russian or Ukrainian, I'll try to understand those two. And then I moved to Germany. So in Russia, I studied linguistics, and I even did a PhD in this. But then I decided to pursue the the dream of my youth, to become a developer. So I moved to Germany. I studied business informatics. And here I am, working as a technology lead for front-end at a small company called Aleri. We're based in Cologne in Germany. And in my spare time, I like discovering new places, but also writing technical articles. I'm writing articles at Medium for ngconf. And if you have any questions or any feedback, anything you want to tell me after my talk, feel free to drop a line via email or Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever suits you best. But let's move on to our topic, why error handling in the first place. Since we're writing web applications, those are shipped to the users and their client side. We don't know what's happening there. So our applications are spread somewhere around the globe, and we have no clue what happens there. And what we can be sure about is that whatever can go wrong will go wrong. So we have to think about all the possible and impossible errors that can occur. Well, for example, like something like this. Fortunately, this is not the real one, so we can move on, just to prove the point that errors can happen anytime. First of all, everyone can write applications that work, but if you want to stand out, you have to care about user experience, and not showing this blue screen of death is one part of this user experience. Just take care of your user. Something went wrong, but we have a plan. So that's what makes a very good application, or that's what differentiates a good application from a very good application. The second part is security. It might be the case that you just log too much, or the server response provides some implementation details, or if the user opens the console, he or she might just see something that he or she is not supposed to see. For example, what is the supposed length of the input, for example, for the password. So, just hide all the things that hackers should not see, and this is another reason why you have to deal with errors. And then again, if you want to improve, you have to know what happened, since your application is somewhere client-side, somewhere in the world out there. You should track the errors to be able to optimize. So let's have a look at the types of errors. There might be some internal errors, usually JavaScript errors, some unhandled promise rejections, or undefined things. So you probably know what I mean. There might be some business side errors. Those are not technical errors per se, but it's something which the business side defines as errors. For example, negative values in the age input field, which is unacceptable, invalid, so it's kind of an error. And of course, there are external errors, something like HTTP errors. And in my talk, I'm gonna concentrate on those, just because they are the most unexpected ones. They happen all the time, and they might also cause internal errors too. Because, for example, the response type doesn't match the one that you expect, or nothing comes back, so you have some undefined values. Well, that's my favorite kind of errors, and we'd better be prepared for them. Let's have a look at another classification. For example, so first of all, there might be some validation errors, and don't get me wrong, you have to validate your input. So make sure this is it is required. You check for the length, you check for valid characters, whatever. But sometimes validation errors still can happen. For example, you have a zip code and you have a city, and you validate both inputs, but the combination doesn't make sense, and you will get a validation error from your server. In this case, why I'm differentiating between other, why I think that this is a separate type of errors, because the user has a chance to enter something different and to succeed in his or her requests. So that's why validation error have to be specific. You have to provide as much information as possible to give the user the chance to change it to succeed. The second type is the general one, the most known one is just like 404 or 500, whatever, some HTTP error response. So you don't get the data or you cannot update the data. The third one is also something known, like you might face it, you can expect it, but sometimes the user doesn't care. That's the difference. For example, you want to load some banner, some commercial, some teaser, something that user is not aware or is not expecting. So if you say, oh my God, a technical error occurred, you might confuse the user. So in this case, maybe, well, it's better not to do anything about it. And the last, but not the least, the unexpected errors. They do occur. They can occur anytime since you don't expect them. What to do about them? Well, as I said, if it's just a validation error and the user can do something about it, you have to provide as much information for the user or the chance description or anything so that the user can change the input. In case it's, well, you cannot get the data or update the data, you can, well, you should explain what's not successful and maybe provide some plan B. So maybe, well, if the update was not successful, maybe the user can send an email or the user can, I don't know, like, just provide some plan B, a workaround if you don't have the data, or explain exactly what happened. Well, in case the user doesn't expect anything and it errors out, just keep poker face. Well, don't show anything. Everything's keeping cool, like, well, nothing happened. And then in case it's an unknown error, well, you have to have a fallback scenario, some redirect to an error page, or some general notification, like, dear user, a technical error occurred. That's like the worst case scenario, but still in this case, you have to handle it somehow. Well, I'm talking about reactive error handling, but you don't have to do reactive programming to handle your errors. In this case, I just like the whole idea of considering web applications as the stream of data. You just, like, the whole idea of the application is moving around your data. And if you think about your applications in this way, an error is nothing else but the interruption of this stream. So what you can do about it, first of all, you have to react. And I like the pun about it, so reactive in the sense that you have to react upon your errors. But the question is how. The first choice is you catch and replace the error. And this is one of the strategies. So I will talk about this in more details in a minute or so. And the second strategy is to catch and rethrow. So you will, in the first case, the recipient won't get anything, won't know that the error occurs. You just say, okay, there was an error, and then I just replace it by some default value that I have for this use case. And then the recipient just gets the default value and is not aware of any errors. And the second strategy is catch and rethrow. So then the user will learn that the error occurs and will have to react upon it itself. And in this case, I'm talking about components. So your components might or might not handle errors themselves, depending on your strategy. So let's have a look at some operators that can help us. But again, you can do without them. So it's just a nice help how to deal with errors. Because especially in Angular, once you start sending HTTP requests, you're dealing with observables. So you are in the domain of reactive programming. So you can also keep using reactive operators from RxJs library. So the most useful is the catch error operator, and it does what it says. It catches errors and then replaces the values by the ones that you provide. So this is the typical catch and replay strategy. So here is our stream, it errors out, and then you just provide, you catch it, and here you provide something else, what you define here. I will show a code example in a minute. In this case, off is not a particular, it's not specific for error handling, but this is a very useful operator just to provide this replacement. So you can basically make your stream out of any data that you have. Here is an example of how you can, what you should put in catch error, because catch error expects on an operator function as an argument. So, and this operator function has two arguments. It's the error and the caught observables. This is the source observable. So you can return the source observable, but then you didn't do anything about it. You can do something with the error, and you can, of course, replace the whole thing in here by this method. And on the next slide, I'm going to show you what this method could look like. For example, handle error, because it takes the error response, it takes the error message and returns a function. That's what we want to have here. The function takes error response as an argument and returns an observable, in our case of null, for example, because null is in our case the default value. So you just, and in here, you can set error notifications, like doing something, informing the user about the error. You can track the error, and here you have to provide some replacement observable. In our case, just null. But you can have some default values in here. And such function can be used with catch error. There are some other useful operators, for example, throw error, and this is good for our catch and rethrow strategy, so that you catch the error, you do something with it, maybe you inform the user, you track, and then you rethrow it, and then it's going to propagate from the service, because I hope you do your requests in the services. It's going to be propagated to the component, so that component is also informed about the error and can do some component-specific stuff with it. Some useful operators around it are also retry and retry when. So it's also good practice if, well, if something is unstable and you think it's going to be useful to retry it, you should retry it. Like it's hard to say when's a good practice, because, if this is a text service, where you know it might be just timed out, you might retry it. But if it's something like, if you're gonna get 4 of 4, I'm afraid the retry won't help much in this situation. So it depends on the use case. And retry when just helps you to provide some additional conditions under which you can retry your request. So let's move on with our errors. The first type that I named was validation errors. And let's say we have our form, and here we have a very basic error notification. It's just a paragraph with the validation error, and when the user clicks on submit form and the error occurs, then it's going to be displayed. But this is specific to this input. That's why we're displaying it under this input field. That's the implementation of the function. So we send the form, and then we just pipe it, and in the pipe we catch it. When we catch it, we can look for a particular status. 422 is, in my current project, the convention for the validation error. So I set the validation error to true. I display the error that I get. Maybe this is also not the best practice, just because this might be too technical. Maybe you want to map it to some user-friendly text. It's up to you. But then again, you have to return something back. Here you can proceed with catching other errors, but maybe it's not the best way to do it here, just because we're in the component. So maybe you should do this generally in the service. We're going to talk about this here. Now we're talking about the known errors, when the data is not loaded or not updated. And here, one of the ways to deal with those errors is to use the interceptor. Here you can also catch it, and here it's also a nice way to handle refreshing of the session token, for example. So here you can check what's the error, and if it's unauthorized, you can refresh the token, or you can check if this is an external or an internal error. So I mean, if this is an instance of HTTP error response, we know that this is external error. But if it's not, then this is something in JavaScript, like local JavaScript specific, as I mentioned in my classification before. The drawback of this solution is if you have multiple HTTP requests and you want to handle errors differently, well, this one will handle it for all of them in the same way. So if you want to be specific about this service, then you have to come up with a different solution, because then you can say, okay, the error occurred in the customer service or the error occurred in the billing service. That's exactly those are the advantages and disadvantages of this approach. So there's another way you can deal with that. Here you can just provide an error component, which is a generic one where you can display all the errors that happen with the specific text message, error message from your service. And here is the component itself. And it just subscribes to, well, you get the error notification service. I'm going to show it in a moment. You subscribe to the notification of this service, and then just display it in here in your error component. And then you can place this component wherever you want. So for example, here. And this is the one that is not input specific. You cannot attribute it to a particular input field. So you just could place it above. As I said, this is the error notification service. Very simple. It just has a one notification, which is a behavior subject, and other. Well, of course, you can provide it as via a getter function. It's a better approach than just set it to public. But for the demo purpose, it's just fine. And here could be how you can see the implementation, what the service does about it. So we have a service, and it does something and sets some requests. And then when the error happens, it just next, like pushes this specific message. It should be more specific than this one, to the notification. And whoever subscribes to this notification gets this message, for example, our error component. That would be a very this is a generic solution with specific error messages. But actually, we can do even better, even drier. For example, if we introduce the error handling service, which will take over all this error handling for us. In this case, we provide the handle error function. I've shown it before when I was talking about catch error. So it just looks into the error response and then does all the handling of the error response. For example, you can track errors here, log it, send it to your error notification service, etc. And you can even provide some additional logic in here. For example, here I just said I want to react to some known errors in a different way as to the unknown errors. Here is just a simple utils function that says, okay, if it's a known error, I will do this. If not, I will throw it and propagate it to the component, to the recipient of this, to the caller of this function. So in this case, the service that does something will look like this. It will send the request, catch the error, and then just call handle error of our error handling service, providing a very specific text message, error message. The next type of errors are those silent errors. They're those that the user doesn't care about. And this is a very simple case, because here, if I will load a banner and it errors out, we just return null, and the subscriber doesn't ever know that something happened and just handles this null or any default value. You might have a default banner for this case, just displays what it gets and doesn't have to deal with all those errors. Yeah. The last but not the least, the unknown errors. In this case, Angular provides the default error handler, but it does nothing but logs out the error message. And as I said in my introduction, it's not always a good idea, just because it might log too much. We don't want to inform our hackers about implementation details. The second reason why you should replace the default implementation is, again, because you want to track those errors. And you can also implement some default behavior for all the errors that you haven't thought about. For example, the generic redirect to an error page, or maybe also display some notification. So this is what you could do. This is the Angular error handler, and you just extend it. Well, name it whatever you want. Global error handler it is in our project. And then in this case, I just redirect to error page. Don't forget to provide it in your module, and actually you're done. Well, I was talking about HTTP all the time, but the question that arises whenever I talk about some similar topics is, well, what about offline? How do you, you have to deal with this too, because even you might run into problems even before you send any HTTP requests. And in here is one way of handling it. You just have behavior subject with observable, sorry, where you merge two states. Let's put it like this: online and offline, and then you you differentiate between them, and you map it to true and false. And then in your components, you can subscribe to this internet connection, and you automatically know what state you're in. And this might be useful, for example, for buttons. If you have a submit button, you might say you might disable it if the user is offline, but then you want to enable it again if the user goes online. That happens a lot when you take a train in Germany, for example, and you have those spots without internet. Well, but this is not enough. As I said, you might run into trouble even before you are connected to internet and send something. You might get a 0 as status code. This is a bit tricky. This is not an HTTP status code because it's not listed under the official codes. Those have 3 digits, and well, you probably have heard about them. This one happens even before, and I've provided some use cases when it can happen, and it's also useful to take care of it. For example, if the request is aborted, it can be aborted by the browser for any reason, but also for by some browser extensions. It might be time-outed, and that's why you just don't get anything. The connection dropped during the request. You get in the infinite redirection loop, and then I think after 20 redirects, according to the standard, well, you will get the browser will set 0 in the status of your request. You might even run into problem if you get the response and then the browser doesn't like your way of doing it, or the browser has problems of parsing the response, and then whatever, when in trouble, just set the status to 0, and that's what you get. It's the trickiest one to my mind, to my opinion. It might be also the case that the firewall blocks, that DNS server fails to resolve. Well, as you see, the use cases are very various. So, well, this is the most difficult one, but also in this case, you might implement this default error handling. And here are some, well, let me briefly talk to the end. As I said, my point here is that you have to have a default solution because you cannot think about all the errors. So, and default error handler or global error handler is a good solution for this one. And here, as you've already seen, well, to my mind, you have to deal with error handlers, error handling. This is for the users, but you also have to test your code, and this is for developers, for your colleagues and for yourself. And here I just provided some ways to test the code that I've just shown to you. It's pretty straightforward. So in a component, you just throw an error, and you provide a response, and then you just throw this error response as a mock implementation of the function, and then you subscribe to it, and then you just check if the error handling was correct. So if the error response was set to true. In case it's you're in the consuming service, you can just flush it. You probably know it. So you just provide some HTTP error response in here and flush it and check. But make sure you expect it in the right closure, because you have to expect things in the error function in here, not in the first one, but in the second one. And then in case of error handling service, well, here it's a bit more complicated. You just have to throw an error and then catch it and then call your service. And then, okay, you have to subscribe to it. And then you check in here what your service did. So here you just start with throwing an error to check the behavior of your error handling service. So we've covered a lot, and I hope that you have an impression of that you can filter out errors, and you can decide whether you replace them. So you just like filter it, or you can think about it as a filter or as a sieve, because you might filter it out so that components or the end users and recipients won't get any of this. You might propagate it down, but the main idea is that your user won't get any of the rain. So it's always sunny in the user's world. Error handling is part of UX, so of user experience. So make sure that the user feels safe, comfortable, and dry in your application. But error handling is by no means justification for bad user experience. So you have to validate your input fields in the first place. You have to provide, you have to navigate your user safely on the paths of your application. Error handling is just your plan B. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for having me. So I think I'm ready for questions if you have some.
Thank you very much, Maria. So I'll probably start with mine first. Well, first of all, just highlight, I didn't know about second parameter code. Like, probably I haven't read documentation for quite a long time about this, and was something new for me as well. And about questions, that's what you said about offline mode and possibility to disable some buttons, submit buttons. It looks really nice and really great user experience. So the question, whether you have heard about some already existing libraries that maybe provide directives that you can just apply for your submit, or maybe some modules that patch your form that could work in this way, like out of the box?
Well, to be honest, I haven't heard about any libraries, just because it's so simple. You can do it yourself. And our project, we have a huge project, like with 30 apps, like a huge mono repo with 30 apps, with millions of users in production. Wait, I'm just trying to find, where was it? Was it in here? Offline here, but I mean, we still use this solution, which is disable buttons or display overlays if the user goes offline.
Okay, and also overlays. I was thinking about disabling the buttons if we have right now a huge project to implement this internet connection subscription is not a challenge, but to implement all the places to disable the buttons, it could be a challenge. And if there is a library just to do it for you,
I can look it up, but even in this case, you just provide a directive and you put it on your button. So it's that's what you do at least.
Okay, good, thank you. And one more, please. That's also from practice. Errors about lazy modules, if you know. Sometimes it happens, as you said, some firewall or so, and basically the part of the bundle cannot be loaded. This module cannot be loaded. Any suggestion how to handle? What's the best way to show an error in this case?
That's a very good question. Well, and you know, like the best answer is always like it depends. It depends on the use case. If this is some functionality for me, this is the there is a difference between if the user stays on the page where the error occurs, or I redirect the user to this final error handling. Oh my God, something went wrong, and I cannot do anything use case. So if this is something where you say the user cannot use your application anymore because this is like the whole use case is broken, then you probably have to redirect the user to this error page. If this is some minor stuff that just well, I mean, one of the forms is not loaded or some well, some minor functionality, then you can also display it as you can disable it. You can react on the upon the error, and if the user doesn't know that he or she is supposed to see something additional, then you can just display nothing, like keep silent about it. If it's something where usually what lazy loading modules is some part of functionality that is missing now, so then you just have to deal with this displaying the error. If you say, okay, without this module, the usage of my app is no longer valid, or the user cannot load it, cannot use it, and you just redirect to the error page.
Okay.
I hope I got it right. I got the question right. If not, feel free to...
that's exactly the question. For most cases, the lazy loading is about changing the route state, going to another page, and basically nothing happens because this module wasn't loaded.
Yeah, but you can react upon it so that you, as I said, depending on the use case, how awful it is.
Okay, I got it. Thank you, and we are moving to our YouTube questions. So first one from Eugene is how such error handling impact performance of web application?
Could you repeat this one?
So it's a question about performance. Do we have any performance issues because of error handling?
No, I think you have performance issues without error handling. I mean, it depends on what you do in when you handle your errors. If you sort your arrays in there, it's not a good idea. If your tracking implementation is slow, of course it will slow down your implementation. But usually, if you don't handle errors, that's what will result in the blue screen of death. So.
Okay, thank you. One more from Eugene. Do you cover your probably unit tests or integration test error handling functionality? So that's probably already shown in a slide that this question was.
Those were unit tests. Well, if you want to have, like, you can also do some end-to-end testing in here just to verify, for example, your text is red and your input field border is also red, or if any error message is displayed. So you can also do end-to-end testing in there. But you also have to, this is a trade-off. Unit tests are fast and end-to-end is slow. So you probably should not test all the input validation errors in your end-to-end testing. You'd better do this in your unit tests, but you can also check by end-to-end tests if the error handling, visual error handling is displayed correctly.
Okay, thank you. Next one from Andrei. From your perspective, what is the best place to handle 401 errors? For example, I want to get new access refresh token per back. What will you choose, interceptor or error service?
I'd say I'd choose interceptor because I think it's valid. Okay, again, it depends. If all your services have to have this bearer token, then it's interceptor would be the best place because it just handles this use case for all the services. If you have some services for the logged in user and some services for not for not logged in user, then you have to differentiate between those. Then you're probably gonna implement it in a separate service. You might, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Moving next to
as a quick addition, we have, for example, a login management service that checks this, and for the application that requires the logged in state, then the service always checks if the user is logged in, and then if not, redirects him or her to the login page. But this is the auth 2.0 login standard. And for the applications where it's not necessary, we don't have this service.
Okay. So question from Victor. Some errors have to be fixed, but devs don't know about them if we didn't care about sending the ones to the server. Any advices here? Good practices?
If I understand the question right, those are the silent errors when the user doesn't care. Well, first of all, the first error handling is not to send a request.
Sorry, so it looks like there is a second part of this message. Some third party may emit console log warning error, deprecation warnings. Do you prefer to silent console at all, or somehow redirect console to the server? Probably send some console messages to the server. That was the question.
Okay, we don't have any console messages at all. That's forbidden by the ESLint rules in our project for security reasons. So if you wanna know something about errors, you just track it. We're not displaying anything. I hope this is what the question was about.
Yeah, it was about third party. If you have third party libraries.
If they log something, well, in this case, we have a security audit, so we'll have a look if those third-party libraries are okay for us, and if they log something that we don't want to. But that's a good question. We don't do anything about it. We just log it.
Okay, so you do not do some monkey patching of console log, not to output it. Just override to be sure that third parties will not do console log.
Again, as I said, like we have a security audit, and what the guys are doing, if they're patching it out, I'm not sure, because I just use it as an npm package from our private Nexus. But as far as I know, well, they don't silent it. But that's a good point. You actually could do this.
Yeah. Okay, next one from Paulina. Can we somehow handle file download errors? For example, some access is absent and we get 404 on its download.
It's well, I thought you're gonna get 0 if something goes wrong with file. Okay, no, sorry, that was the file protocol. With this one, I have to check out. Let me come back to this question. I think I can answer it on YouTube, right? Or here on StreamYard. I have to look it up in our code because we do deal with this. We do handle it. I'm not, before I lie, I want to make sure that I provide the correct answer to this one, if it's okay.
Well, you can do like we do it in front end. We just show first good result, say some answer, and then if server returns error, we roll back it.
As I said, I'm gonna just check what we exactly do about file download, how we react upon it, and then I'll just provide some code or some
okay.
well. Yep.
That's good. I think that will be interesting to hear, not only for Polina.
Cool.
Okay, good. I see that's all the questions. Now we need to select the best question. What we didn't do for previous talk, but Katerina already selected, so we'll do. So that's Maria, for you now the call to select the best question.
There were so many good questions. Can I just will I see can I see all of them?
I can switch if you want. I can switch to Katerina. She will tell what was the best question for her, and meanwhile you can check.
Thank you. Give me more time to check upon all those questions, because all of them were really good.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. Let's switch to Katerina back.
Hey, sorry, it's a bit darker here now. Let me open a light. Okay, much better. So yes, the best question was the question about using private NX Cloud for production applications for security reasons. And I chose that as the best question because it's something we do get asked a lot. And a lot of companies need such a scenario, have such a use case. And yeah, I think it's something that a lot of companies worry about and ask about it. So that's why I thought it was the best question.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Polina, you're getting your JetBrains license for 1 year for any product. Yeah, please contact us after the meetup in any channel. We will provide you the key to use. And thank you, Katerina.
Thank you.
And we are switching back to Maria.
So I had a moment to look through, and I think I like the question from Andrei Blechin the most, just because I'm working a lot with the whole authorization and authentication topics, and it's just, well, it resonates with my current project.
Okay, cool, thank you. So Andrei, same goes for you. You're getting your JetBrains license for 1 year for any product. Please contact us in any channel after a meetup. And Maria, once again, thank you very much for the great presentation.